That could be a Halloween outfit, that.
Okay.
Sausage wrapped in bacon.
I was just going to say, who's going to be your blanket?
Do you fancy auditioning to be the bacon? Yes.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm a 30-something with a 4-year-old stepdaughter and a pregnant fiance.
And I'm Daniel. I'm a 30-something, and I've had kids for a while, ranging from toddlers to teens.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 5 of Ramblings of Dadmen. Normal service will resume this week after our special little episode last week. Daniel, is your head recovered?
No, I was fine. I do believe you were a bit of a lightweight, though.
Yeah, no, I was fine in the morning. I think bacon helped, to be perfectly honest with you. And the McDonald's driving back as well helped as well. It really needed to soak the alcohol.
That means you had a lot of barbecue and a McDonald's within about 4 hours.
Yes.
Legend.
Yes. Well, basically, all I'm getting from this is I should have just answered the questions, but the hangover was worth it, to be honest with you.
So what I realised afterwards, that it was probably far easier to not answer the questions and not be embarrassed and just take shots. After listening back, there was like sort of 30 questions. We pretty much answered a good 2/3 of those questions. We should have just drank more.
I don't know if I could have got away with 30 shots, to be honest with you. But, you know, let's hope people enjoyed it. I hope you did enjoy that episode. You know, we had fun doing it.
And it's also worth mentioning at this point that we have officially now had over 200 downloads of the podcast, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for little old us, people who've just started off doing podcasting, I think it's amazing. And I want to thank each and every person who's given us a listen this far, followed, shared, liked, any of that. Genuinely means a lot.
Yeah, it really does. Just to add to that, we are now on 451 followers on Instagram. Ooh. So we're really building a nice community there. So thank you very much for following us as well. Keep interacting with us. We're really enjoying the feedback. And, you know, the whole point of doing this podcast was to try and make a bit of a community for everybody. So, you know, we can discuss any issues we have together. So please keep getting in touch with us and anything that you want to suggest or add, we will speak on this podcast.
And that does actually link quite nicely today, because we have had our first listener suggested topic. So we'll cover that a little bit later. But obviously, if anybody else wants to throw anything at us that they want us to cover in this, by all means, reach out to us on Instagram at Ramblings of Dadmen, find us on Facebook, or what we've not mentioned this far, we've got a dedicated email address, so ramblingsofdadmen@outlook.com.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, well, we can talk about the person a little bit later, but how's your week been, buddy?
Yeah, good. I think for the wife and kids, and obviously there's a bit of a delay between when we record these and when these go live, but they've been on sort of the last week of half term, so they've been very much trying to cram in as many activities as possible, whereas I've just been working all week. So today is actually 11 years ago to the day since we started going out.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Where did you meet? And I never really did hear that story. I knew that you met somebody.
So, I mean, we covered a little bit of that last week, but where we met was a bit of an odd story. So she actually went to the same school as us, but she was in the year above. Our paths never really crossed. We didn't know each other in school. You know, a couple of years down the line, we met each other out in Wigan. The first words that came out of her mouth were, "Here, I look after your kids at nursery. Buy me a drink." I had no option, really. I just bought her a drink, and we sort of got chatting. We spent maybe an hour and a half chatting, and then my friends were going to a different pub, and her friends were going to somewhere else. So we sort of separated. And I just made the decision later on that night that I genuinely enjoyed speaking to her, and went to try and find her again. And the rest is history. Fate has a funny way of making things work, I guess.
Yeah. Well, today we've been to our first wedding fair. I did mention it a couple of weeks ago, and I won't mention where it is because I hated it.
All right.
I really didn't like it in the slightest. Me and Becky were talking about it, and like we didn't really have an idea of what kind of wedding we want. And then it was me that turned into the bridezilla.
Oh no!
I really was, yeah. The place that we were looking for was kind of like a stately home, and it just seemed like they had 2 rooms that they've decorated really nicely, and then everything else had been neglected for 25 years, including the bridal suite.
Oh, nice.
I didn't like it. So it's me that turned into the bridezilla.
Well, I think officially have we now coined a new term there, groomzilla.
Groomzilla, yeah, maybe. How many fairs did you go to? When did you find the perfect?
To be fair, we looked at venues first before we went to fairs. As far as I remember, we went and looked at a few different venues, and I think there was about 5 or 6 venues we looked at. We knew when we walked into one of them, specifically the look and feel of the room, that was where we wanted to get married. And then from there, we only went to, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 wedding fairs, but there was purpose for each one. We went to each of the wedding fairs to look for, say, wedding cards, or look for photographers, or look for entertainment. And we used the wedding fairs as an opportunity to go and sort of peruse who and what was on offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I should have explained myself a little bit better. Even though we went to a wedding fair, the actual venue was part of the package as well. So it was the venue that I didn't like. Oh. And then after the wedding fair, Becky's sister is moving to Leeds to go to her postgraduate, and she moves next week. So, she decided she wanted a bit of a leave-in do, for want of a better word. What she decided she wanted was to have a Christmas dinner with her family. So we have had Christmas dinner today, and I am fucking stuffed.
Hey, no, she's played an absolute blinder here. She's listened to a couple of episodes back and heard that you're fucking everybody off at Christmas. So she's like, no, fuck that. I'm having Christmas dinner with you.
Yeah.
That's a perfect idea. She knows exactly what she's doing. High five.
She's got it in now. In fairness, though, Christmas last year was a little bit of a weird time for everybody, weren't we? And we didn't really get the family experience that we all wanted, and I knew that members of her family couldn't make it over Christmas. So it was actually really nice to have a day with everybody. But maybe she has listened to a couple of weeks ago. Did you
do Christmas presents?
We did not do Christmas presents. The Christmas presents was eating pigs in blankets in September. That's a treat for everybody.
They should be sold all year round.
Yeah.
That could be a Halloween outfit, that. Okay. Sausage wrapped in bacon.
I was just going to say, who's going to be your blanket?
Do you fancy auditioning to be the bacon?
I'm sure we've dressed up in worse. As just mentioned in that photo that you sent me from about 16 years ago. 16. In fact, it's probably longer than that. It's maybe
that is more. That's about 20 years ago.
Wow. We thought we were cool, but we will post that on Instagram so you can all laugh at us. Okay. So we are 27 weeks today. The baby is the size of a bunch of bananas.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you there. Are you telling me that there's more than one?
No. Although I did read about an article a few days ago. It was Becky that was telling me about it, about a person that... Do you remember the film Twins, right? Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, that happened in real life, where there was a normal 7-pound baby, and then there was a 2-pound baby literally hiding right behind, so wasn't picked up. Luckily, both babies are fine, but could you imagine?
I'm telling you, it happens.
Yeah, man. So, little bit of podcast-related admin. A couple of weeks ago, you said to me that the cravings will change. You are right, my friend.
Woo!
Cravings have changed. We are now craving brownies, but not just any type of brownies. We're talking the best brownies you can ever think of. Have you ever seen them? I don't know if you've ever seen them on social media where people deliver brownies by the post. You get loads of crazy flavours, like you get like Kinder Bueno flavours and Biscoff flavours. Have you ever heard of them?
You know, you're scrolling through Facebook or whatever, and different things pop up that people making stuff. I've seen pictures of that kind of stuff. I've never tasted them.
Oh my God, you are missing out. They are a taste sensation. Trouble is, I'm bombarded with them now. And Becky loves them so much. She's eating a normal amount of brownies. It's not like she's going overboard. Although today is the first time that her midwife has recommended that she needs to eat 400 calories more than usual.
See, big bird. The midwives are out in force now. They know that you should be eating a silly amount of calories, and if you're not doing, I'm going to recommend it now. Get some blocks of cheese.
Well, luckily the brownies are coming in quite handy for that. She can't just have the £1 ones from Asda where you get 27. It's got to be these £20 brownies where they come in the post a few days later.
To be fair, I'm not pregnant and I'm craving them right now.
Yeah. If anyone's listening that is pregnant, craving brownies,
Or even if you're not.
Any dads that are also craving brownies, we'll try and hook you up somehow.
I think it sounds like we might maybe do a competition. You don't have to answer any awkward questions, like what was the third thing we said in the second episode. Although if you want to let us know on socials what the third thing was we said in the second episode, then by all means. We will probably just do a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Another big week for us, a big week in that Florence, she starts school for the first time, but she's already been in for a little taste today. She seemed to enjoy it, so...
Yeah, big.
Yeah, that is big. Luckily, she seems like she's been enjoying it, and she's very looking forward to it. Florence is an August baby, so she's going to be one of the youngest, but yeah, she's been looking forward to it for a long time, to be honest.
I don't think you need to worry too much about that. I mean, they do say that younger girls tend to thrive more than younger boys.
Okay.
I'm going to doff the cap here. My Beck, summer-born boys tend to find school a little bit harder.
Okay.
But it doesn't affect summer-born girls, so I'm told.
Wow, really? I mean, George is a summer baby as well, but also, just for some context, Beck's works in a school, right?
Yeah, she's been in school environment. She's been in sort of early years for a long time. But yeah, I don't think, Florence, I don't think she's going to struggle whatsoever. She's very outgoing, isn't she? And I think over the next 12 months, you'll see a massive change in her. We saw that with Georgia. And my lad, he's sort of getting to the point where he's going to be starting that journey or another journey. He's just going into his final year, ready to sit his exams. So
my days.
Yeah, then he's onto the big bad world of work and college and real life.
Where you can't just play FIFA all day.
We had a conversation about this over the last week. It was like, right, next year, you need to start planning for your future. You need to think about college. You need to think about jobs. What do you want to do? You can't just spend all day on FIFA. You can't just get up at dinner time. That's not how life works. You went, well, just work night shifts. It's going places because there's always a thing where if you want to find the easiest and best solution to something, to any problem, give it to someone lazy and they'll find a way to get something done as fast and efficiently as possible. Now, I'm not saying he's lazy, but that is absolute genius. How to get what you want out of life is just change the way that you live. Beautiful.
Yeah. Has he got an idea of whether he's going to work night shifts?
No, not yet. But that'll come. He's got college. I want him to... I'm not too sure if it is a legal requirement. I'm pretty sure it is. You've got to either be in full-time employment or education up until 18 now.
Some sort of apprenticeship or full-time education up until you're 18, isn't it? And I guess he's got to find out what he wants to do. But, I mean, 16, 17, 18, it's not an age where you should worry about what you want to do in your life. I'm 35. I still don't know what I want to do with.
Are you quoting the famous song Sunscreen there?
Do you know, I was thinking the sunscreen. As soon as I said that, I thought, I've got sunscreen in my head right now.
Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds still don't know.
Yeah. Oh, God, that was a great song.
Yeah. Really.
But yeah, it still applies. I mean, Callum's got a lot of time to figure out what he wants to do. He just needs to find out himself and fail in his own way or pass in his own way, I guess, doesn't he? One of your jobs is to try and help him in the right direction without pushing.
Your role changes over time. You're very much, when they're young, they need you. When you're older, it's the other way around, you need them. My role now for him is very much a supporting role, rather than if Georgia falls over or anything like that, or if Florence falls over, they'll turn to us for help. This week I've been teaching Georgia to ride a bike. She fell off. And her first reaction was to look at me. I've hurt my knee. What do I do? Whereas now he's getting older, that role it's less intense, if this makes sense.
How do you find that transition? Because I'm thinking about it in that, 16, 17, 18 years time, I'm going to have my own child and I'm going to be in that position and I'm freaking myself out about it, just thinking about it. How have you managed to transition into that role?
There's an old wives' tale. Put a frog in a pan of boiling water, he'll jump straight out. But if you put a frog in a pan of cold water and gradually turn the temperature up, it won't recognise and it'll boil. it doesn't just happen just like that, where instantly your role changes. It's a gradual thing. There's key times where, when they transition and go to high school, that the first year of primary school, exactly what you're going to go through now with Flossie, she'll get a little bit of independence and start wanting to do things for herself, like fastening a coat, putting her shoes on, all of that. Maybe she does bits of that now, but she'll get a lot more independence and want to do things for herself. When they first start high school, that first year of high school, there's a massive change because they've gone from being surrounded by a couple of hundred kids who age from 4 to 11, then all of a sudden they're mixing with people. Their age range is then from 11 to 16. And those 16-year-olds have got different experiences because they're potentially mixing with people who are 17, 18. It doesn't just flip overnight. It's very gradual. And I think you will notice where they'll want more independence. They'll want to do more themselves.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. That seems calm me down a little bit. The school that Flossie's going to, maybe this is different from when I was younger. Maybe this is a thing that just happens in schools now. But there's 90 people that's in the same class.
I think it's getting more commonplace. It's called triple form entry. Beck's going to hate me. She'd be seething right now that I'm stealing all of her knowledge. This is very much me listening to her, which, FYI, shows that I do listen.
But yeah, of course, next week you'll get it wrong again and have to apologise. But
yeah, it won't be called triple form entry. It'll be called something really stupid. So I'll apologise next week. But each form entry is roughly about 30 kids. And it's basically just 3 classes all pooled together. And they'll all have shared resources. But then they'll have their own teacher and they'll split off into groups.
Yeah. I mean, Florence doesn't seem fazed by it. She looks quite like she's really excited by it. And by all accounts from a little visit from last Friday, she's raring to go tomorrow. But yeah, I just thinking about being in front of 90 people is a scary concept for me now. I don't know probably how I could have dealt with that at 4, but maybe I'm just a bit old and just used to being stuck in my ways. I actually remember my first day at school very, very briefly. I don't remember much about it, but I remember my mum having sewed a name badge in my jumper, and I remember putting my bags in the cloakroom, and I remember my first teacher called Mrs. Sampson, and I remember having juice and biscuits on the first day.
Wow.
We were 1990. My intake was 1990 and yours was the same, right? So yeah. We just missed out on Thatcher stole all the milk by that time. So it's 20p juice and biscuits.
Yeah, I remember my first teacher. To be fair, I actually still see her now, Mrs. Yates. And her daughter went on to work at that school and was involved loosely with Callum when he was there from a teaching perspective. And her granddaughter now goes to the same school as Georgia. So our paths are sort of have always crossed. And I'm not sure if it was my first day, but I remember getting really upset going up to school. And I think all the other kids had gone in. I do remember walking up the path and being really upset. And then something just clicked. I was like, no, it's fine. I'm going in. And I had this plastic He-Man sword. And I looked at my mum and went, don't worry, I'm going in. Here's my sword. You take it home and you can protect yourself. And I just tootled on into school then.
That's brilliant. I remember this must have been a few months afterwards. I finished school and for whatever reason, my mother couldn't pick me up. And it was agreed that I was going to stop at one of my friend's house for a couple of hours. And I always remember me coming out the school and my friend's dad at the time came to pick us both up. I passed him my lunchbox for him to hold. Of course, I was only a kid. And honestly, he looked at me as if he was going to murder me. He was like, you hold your own lunchbox. And I have never been so scared in my life. Like, I must have taken for granted of my mum and my nan holding my lunchbox as I walked home from school. And I was scared for many years to come of him. But yeah, I mean, that's me learning my independence because I was only 4, but I always carried my own lunchbox since. So you did mention something about old wife tales earlier, and that's something that I wanted to very briefly pick up on because we have mentioned it before, but one of the things we were always told that old wives' tales, if it's salty food, it's definitely a boy. If it's sweet foods, it's definitely a girl. Obviously, we're a bit later in the pregnancy now, and the cravings are changed. But what did you think of old wives' tales? Do you think there's a little bit of truth into them, or is it just all bollocks, probably?
I've flashed up a little list here of some that you can use to predict the gender. And one of the ones that's on this list always comes up. Cravings, whether it's sweet or salty, whether you're carrying high or low.
Yeah, that was another one. The high or lows one's something that I've heard before. Just remind me, is it
high for a girl,
high
low for a boy?
Girl. Yeah.
Which I don't know if it's true. I think we need to revisit this and bring on somebody
someone that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. I tell you what, let's put you on the spot a little bit, and I'll read out a few, and you can say yes or no, and then we'll say whether it's going to be a boy or girl. Obviously, we know it's a girl, but let's see if you match the gender predictions.
Okay, that's quite good. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so obviously you've said the cravings. Moodiness. Is she moody or happy?
I mean, it depends on the time of the day. I would say she's happy.
That would suggest it's a boy.
Oh, right, okay.
Here's a good one. Is Daddy gaining weight or maintaining weight?
Daddy's probably put some weight on now. He lost weight over summer. He lost about 1.5 stone, but he's definitely put that all on already in about 3 weeks. So I think Daddy's definitely gaining weight.
Well, that definitely means that's a girl. Okay?
Right.
Did she have morning sickness?
100% morning sickness, yes.
Yeah, okay, a girl. Is her skin soft or dry?
Soft.
That's a girl. Does she have headaches?
She does have headaches, yeah.
That would be a boy.
Oh, right, okay.
We'll skip the carrying, whether it's low or high. Oh, yeah, I mean, you can answer if you want.
Well, the thing is about our little baby is that she doesn't stop fucking moving. So she's whatever she wants to be. Sometimes she's high, sometimes she's low.
It may be there's one of each in there, and that's why she's both, she are both high and low at the same time.
Potentially. Sometimes she goes right down to the spine. It's very strange. She is all over the place. Speedy Gonzales. I would say mostly low, though.
Oh, that, again, it's a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, does Becky sleep on her left or on her right?
Oh, hang on. So she sleeps on her left.
That would be a boy.
Oh.
You've given pretty even answers there, so I'm sticking with you've got twins and it's one of each.
I'm sticking with the old wives' tales. Might not mean anything.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, in fairness to the sleep position, Becky sleeps in about 7 different positions a night, and she doesn't sleep very well.
I don't think I've ever stumbled across a pregnant woman that has said, yeah, I sleep like a log every night.
Yeah, she's definitely not having a very comfortable phase at the minute, and it's hard to be supportive, especially when we've got Flossie. I mean, obviously I'm a stepdad, so there's certain things that Flossie won't let me do, and that's totally fine. And one of them is trying to help her at the night. So it does mean that Becky has to take a lot of the flack at the night time. So she's up a lot more. So she's getting a lot more broken sleep.
You know what I thought you was going to say then? I can't really comment because I'm usually fast asleep myself.
I do wake up, but I feel kind of useless. And maybe that's a thing on my part, is that I feel like I can't help at that time because, Flossie's half awake and she wants a mum at that time, and that's absolutely fine. I completely understand it. But I also kind of feel sorry for Becky that I'm not able to help out at that time. This morning, I got up early and I made breakfast, and, Becky got an extra hour and a half in bed. So, I can help out in other ways.
Yeah.
It kind of does I feel not useless for want of a better word, but I feel upset that I can't help.
Yeah, I think you've got to get used to that, especially coming in the build-up for the next 13 weeks, because exactly what you're describing there, that when you said you felt useless, that's what I felt in the delivery suite, and I'm pretty sure Beck will agree. I was useless because I was making a coffee halfway through. But I felt that, and I can relate so hard, that I was watching her go through all this pain of labour, and there was nothing I could do to help to stop it, and you've just got to be there. And I suppose that's a dad's experience of pregnancy. You've just got to be there and support them.
Yeah, and I guess from me thinking in my head now is that the person that you love the most is under so much pain and is going through all this trauma, for what better word, because it is trauma. I mean, you're literally going to get ripped a new one, excuse the pun. And there's nothing you can do to try and help this apart from being supportive. And
I think you might get ripped a new one for reminding Becky that she's going to get ripped a new one.
yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, Becky. But yeah, I guess that must be a really hard thing to go through because, if we could turn the tables and I could be in that position, if it would avoid Becky being in so much pain, I would 100% do that. But
I think every man says that, knowing that the tables could never be turned.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
I think if men had to give birth, there would be far fewer people in the world.
Well, yeah. I'm calling in sick. We don't do that. Get Bob to do it. Bob's good.
You see what's going on here? Mike's giving birth. Look at it. Oh my God. No, look at the colours of fluids coming out of there. The labour wards would be an absolute nightmare. It'd just be Sky Sports on. There'd be beer pumps.
Yeah, there'd be no gas and air. It'll just be a pint of Foster's and a packet of Port Scratchings. And yeah, it wouldn't. I think women are far braver than men.
Definitely. So I think it's a good point tonight to just talk about that listener topic that was suggested to us. And it's not so much controversial, but it's an interesting one. And there's no right answer. There's probably many different answers. The question was, what happens when both parents have got opposing views on choosing something for the child, such as choice of school, whether they're vegetarian, things like that? Have you and Becky sat down and I know schools obviously are way off at this point, and you've got a little bit of exposure with Flossie at the minute. But that's very much a supporting role, and I suppose Becky and Flossie's dad make the decisions, and you're just there to help out. Have you given any thought as to whether you want your child to be vegetarian? You and Becky discussed that. Have you come up against any opposing ideas at this point?
Yeah, well, to answer your first question, yeah, you're absolutely right. I do a supportive role. I always joke with Becky that I get to do 25% of the work, which is all the fun bits, really. Becky and Flossie's dad have a really good co-parenting relationship, and there's no need for me to get involved with that. So, yes, you are right. I am very much a supporting role to Becky, and I don't ever think that'll change, and there's no need for that to change because I know my role, I'm comfortable in my role, and I fully appreciate that they have a very good relationship.
I think what you're experiencing is something I get called a lot, and it's Uncle Knobhead syndrome. You basically get to wind the kid up and then give it back. Otherwise, you've got to be there for the falling. You can't just go and give Flossie a fuck ton of sugar and then give it back to Becky and go, you go and sort her out. See you in a bit. You're there to clean up that sick if she's sick. But I suppose it's a little bit like that Uncle Knobhead syndrome where you get to experience all the fun stuff and then when you've got them in trouble, you go and slide off into a small corner and pretend like you've done nothing.
Yeah, kind of. Funny you should mention that because Flossie and I made brownies the other day. And we made brownies because Mummy's got a craving for brownies. So we decided to make some. And one of the best bit about making brownies is eating the mixture, isn't it? Like the last remnants of the mixture. So in true Uncle Knobhead style, I said she could eat the mixture. And then I decided to pick her up and dip her head in the mixture bowl. And she absolutely loved it. She was brilliant. But yeah, afterwards, when her head was full of chocolate and Mummy had to go bath her, she wasn't best pleased. But yeah, I think Uncle Knobhead is truly fitting.
So what about the second point then? Have you two, I mean, you might not, you're still going through the early phases, but have you sat down, have you discussed anything? Because obviously different people have got different views on this. If you've got shared core values, things like that.
We haven't really talked about, there's nothing really major that we've had to discuss yet. We've briefly mentioned the idea of whether she should be christened, but neither is a pro or against it in terms of we're not particularly religious, but they're not here anymore. But I know that my grandparents would have probably pushed for a christening.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just sentimental feelings from my part. I was christened, Becky was christened, I think.
We will bring you a correction next week on whether she wasn't.
I'm pretty sure I was christened and Becky was christened, but our youngest siblings weren't. So certainly my brother and my sister weren't christened, and I tell them on a regular basis that they aren't real people.
You'll laugh at them from the other side of the pearly gates.
Yeah, and I'm sure Becky's sister is in the same position, but I will clarify that I might be wrong. But it's something that we have discussed very briefly, but we haven't been at that point in Truthful. I can imagine from another point, if somebody, I mean, this is a hypothetical situation, but if somebody wanted kids and the other person in the relationship didn't want kids, for example, I'm sure that's a very difficult conversation to have. And really, how can that relationship last if you want two completely different things? Because having a child is such a life-changing decision, but it's probably going to be one of the best things you're ever gonna do.
Yeah.
But if your heart's really not in it and you're absolutely 100% against having kids, how can that relationship work? Do you understand where I'm getting back at that?
Yeah, so that's more the fundamental values in it, where you jointly make a decision whether you do or don't want kids, and you have that very early on in a relationship. And I think
you don't. I think that's the other thing is that you don't. And there's so many relationships where they're based on a unplanned pregnancy. Is that fair? I certainly know that I was an accident, so we are reminded on a yearly basis that we are all accidents.
I think Bob Ross would say you were a happy accident.
I guess it'd be very different if you didn't have. It'll be very difficult if you didn't have the same core values. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The reader that's come in is where there's different ideologies.
We'll not give too much away so they don't get outed to their partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did sort of approach me and said that they've got contrasting values or contrasting approaches, and they're going through that now, navigating it. They're having those conversations. One person wants one and one person wants the exact opposite for their child. I was curious to bring it up to see if you'd gone through that yet. If not, that may be something that you and Becky experience, when you're deciding whether you want your child to go to a Catholic school, whether you want, obviously you've had the christening conversation. You will have had a conversation about baby names, and that's naturally a joint conversation.
Yeah.
I see in some relationships where there is one person that makes the decisions and the other person very much allows it to happen. And I suppose you've either got to be comfortable with that, or it's how far you take that and how comfortable you are in your relationship to be able to challenge that other person.
Yeah, it's about, I think from my point of view, I feel I'm lucky in that I'm able to talk with Becky and, we can
have open and honest discussion about it.
Yeah, and I think I'm lucky that we can have open and honest discussions. We can talk about it, and we can talk about, because we're practically the same person, we generally have similar views and tend to agree. I can imagine it being very difficult. I guess you're right that you have to be comfortable in either someone taking the lead and being a more dominant person in the relationship in terms of decisions, or you're able to talk through it and you're able to discuss some stuff. We haven't had that situation yet. Names is a good example. I mean, we had about 100 names, but we whittled it down to about 3, and one of them just felt right. Flossie also said it completely unrelated. She said, I really like this name. I mentioned it. It has some sort of sentimental value to Becky, and it's a Christmassy name as well. So it just felt right. I mean, I don't want to say it just yet because
Santa.
We may change our minds, but at the minute it feels right. And that was it was a conversation over many weeks, but it is about talking things, and I think it is about being honest. And I mean, that's the fundamentals to be. You need to be honest in a relationship, and if you're hiding about any disagreements or you feel pressured into doing something that you don't want to do, I guess you have to question whether you can be honest with that person. Have you ever been in that position?
Fortunately not, and that's why it sort of surprised me. I wanted to see if you'd been in that position, really, if you'd experienced that. And I think that's probably testament to our relationship. Decisions are very easy for us to make because we both want the same things. We had a conversation very, very early into our relationship of what do we want out of life. And we both decided we wanted a house and we wanted kids and we wanted to get married. We just clicked. So all the decisions that we've made up to this point have been very, very easy. And I guess that's just because we're comfortable enough with each other that we can be open and honest and just talk to each other. And if one of us disagrees, and we compromise, and the compromise is that Bet gets her own way.
Yeah.
No.
I guess that's a fundamental as we go back to you. You have to be honest, and you have to spend some time talking about it, and you have to be confident in what you're saying, because if you're the back of your head thinking, I don't really agree with this, or I feel really uncomfortable about this decision, you're not saying anything, it's not going to be good for your relationship, is it? So if you can't agree, or you're not agreeing to something, I think you need to speak as adults, really, and talk about what things you're going through and why you don't feel uncomfortable with it. And it really is about being confident. And it sounds like such a cop-out of an answer, but from somebody that's able to talk with the partner and feel like they can say anything, and, you know, as you found out from last week, crying in bed about, I feel like fortunate, but you really need to have that kind of relationship for anything to work, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess we're in a very similar position as when you know, you know.
No, I agree. Like you said, when you know, you just know. Well, I think we've rambled on enough at that point, and it's probably good to let everyone get back to their working week, to their day, to their evening.
Yeah, get back to your day.
Thanks once again for joining us. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next week.
See you soon, guys.